And I am live. Greetings and welcome to Act One, a Canadian take on news events. Wow, I see that there are already two people watching. It is right now 9:32. I am 2 minutes late starting. I'd scheduled this for 9:30. That's pretty much the norm for me. If you see that I schedule a video for 9:30, 9:45, typically expect that it will, if it's not right on time, it'll be only a few minutes late. Today we are Sunday, the 16th of November, 2025, and tonight I wanted to talk about the potential. I'm going to frame it as the potential for there to be disruptions in the food supply chain. And what brought this to mind was some digging that I did on the supply of turkeys. The United States is coming up to American Thanksgiving. I think the date, I did a video just on it very early this morning. Um, and I think it's the 27th, this coming Thursday. It is the not the last Thursday in November. It's the fourth Thursday in November. Typically, the fourth is the last, but if the month starts on a Thursday, then it'll actually be the fifth on occasion. So I like to get things right, although I'm not off. I wasn't off by much. Fourth Thursday, fifth Thursday, whatever the case. At any rate, if you're watching live, fill up the live chat. And if you're watching later, if you're not watching this live, give me some comments down below. Stick around. The conversation, the content can quite often be interesting. Of course, that's up to you to decide for yourself. I love what Danny's writing. He always puts us in the live chat. Jesus is King. I am a Christian. I made it out to church today. That is 3 Sundays in a row. I'm trying to be far more intentional in attending worship, in going to church. But that's the topic for another video. Interestingly enough, the sermon today at church was Ryan was preaching on the Lord's Prayer, and he expanded out on it, but he fixated a bit on the "Give us this day our daily bread," and talked about the fact that we most in the congregation, we've got fridges and freezers and pantries filled with food, and we tend to think of ourselves as we tend to worry about where is our daily bread going to come from? Have I got enough stored up? Seemed a fitting message given that early in the morning before church, I uploaded a video talking about our daily bread, and about the potential for the food supply chain to. I think there's a real chance that it could be disrupted, and I will get into that. But for longtime viewers, I have some news. If you've been watching the channel, if you had been watching the channel going back to September and previously, you'll know that I used to have something of a co-host. Candy, the wonder dog, the wonder pup, she was a 5.5, 5 3/4 year old border collie, Aussie Shepherd mix, who had come into the family. I believe the date was March 18th of 2020. We should have named her COVID. We had picked her out from a breeder, and that was the day that she was to come into the house. I was still serving in the Army at the time, and it coincided with a leave period. I was taking some time off, and so that was the day that Candy came into the house. And sadly, over the Labor Day weekend, she suffered some form of toxic poisoning that affected her brain and her liver. And unfortunately, she's no longer with us. So I've had to have missed her. And with much prodding from a certain 12-year-old amazing boy, my youngest, we will be looking at a puppy on Tuesday. So there is the very real potential that I may have a co-host again, as yet unnamed. We'll wait and see if we have a new family member. I'll leave it there, but I find there's a bit of symmetry here. Candy came into the house again. I believe the date was March 18th. She had been born on December 31st of 2019. And everyone should know what happened in March of 2020. And I believe March 18th was the first day or second day of lockdown. We should have named her COVID or Corona. Um, and when we had picked her out, in February, obviously not knowing what was coming. Had we known, I wonder, I have to openly question, would I have decided to get a dog knowing that we're going into this lockdown period and all the other stuff that we had to go through? Honestly, I don't know. Probably would have, but at any rate, it's on my mind. Uh, we're getting a dog now, and now there's seems to be a lot of chatter about bird flu. And again, symmetry. Uh, we'll see if something happens Tuesday, Wednesday of this coming week, and if we get the dog. Uh, And I like what Danny's writing that it won't replace Candy, but it will fill a void. Every dog is unique. I've had a number. First one was Max. Next one was Bernie. The next one after that was Kira. And then came Candy. And 5.5 years is too short. The second dog we had, Bernie, she probably lived to be about 20. And for me, the mark is for an average sized dog is about 15 years. But, I think a dozen should at least. But anyway, again, don't congratulate me yet, though, Danny. That decision has yet to be made. We have to meet the dog. It has to be a good fit, has to be a friendly dog. Not gonna, if she snarls, bites at me, and won't come near me, or he, depending, we don't know whether we're going to pick a boy or a girl if we pick one. Anyway, I'm digressing all over the place. So, what led me down this road of thinking that there might be a disruption to the food supply chain? And it centered on the fact that I hadn't mentioned previously on my channel where I work. I left the Army in September, or rather in June of 2021. And that was because I knew that they were going to mandate the whats, which actually got mandated in September or October of that year. So I got out ahead of time, requested a voluntary release. It was granted, and then in February of 2022. So after being not working for nearly a year and not being able to do anything because I couldn't get on a plane, couldn't get on a train, couldn't go to Tim Hortons, couldn't do anything because I didn't have a certain passport, uh, I started to work again, and I got a job at a local grocery store. I've never mentioned before that it's a grocery store, but it's pertinent because at this store, with American Thanksgiving coming up, we've had a number of people coming in and asking, do you have any turkeys? Do you have any turkeys? It seems to happen about once a day, once or twice a day. Someone will come up and ask, do you have any turkeys? And we have not been supplied with any as of yet. And in talking to people, I've been told by others that, gosh, there aren't any anywhere. They've been to other grocery stores, to Walmart, etc., and they haven't been able to find turkeys anywhere. And I found that curious. Christmas is not far away, which is when Canadians will typically, we already had our Thanksgiving. Any Americans watching, Canadians, we celebrate our Thanksgiving in October because Thanksgiving is ultimately something of a harvest festival, a harvest holiday, celebrate giving thanks for the harvest. Well, our harvest is in October, not November. Our winters come sooner. And so we celebrate it a month, more than a month ahead of our American friends. But we're not far away. We're a month and 9 days away. So about 5 weeks away from Christmas, and people like to get prepared. And I should note that on that video that I published this morning, Whale Oil Beef, who lives out in British Columbia, put up a comment saying that he just saw butterballs at a butterball frozen turkeys at a local grocer in his neck of the woods. And I can, for the life of me, I can never remember exactly where in British Columbia he's from. Richmond is coming to mind, but I'm not 100% sure. I know that he's not in Vancouver, he's not in Victoria, he's not in Kelowna. I think Richmond comes to mind. Getting back to the dog, Danny's writing that when getting a dog, you should let the dog choose you, not the other way around. And I've heard that before, and I agree with it wholeheartedly. What we're actually going to do is there are going to be two puppies coming to the house, and I'm going to see if one of them will come to my little guy, my big guy, 12 years old. He's getting tall. And if one is happy and coming to him and licking him, we'll let the dog choose him. Anyway, Danny is writing that wild turkey, aka bourbon, is also impossible to find in Canada thanks to the Liberals. Well, this is more of a globalist agenda. Now, here's what I learned. Here is what I learned. There's a website that I discovered, and the name of it is escaping me now. But it on this organization's website, it says an initiative of the Council for Foreign Relations. And so basically, I'm going to say that this information is basically coming from the Council on Foreign Relations, the CFR. And if you're unfamiliar with the Council on Foreign Relations, they're pretty much lockstep with the World Economic Forum. It's the same type of organization, minus the fact that they don't have a campus type setting in Davos, Switzerland. It's more of a Washington-based think tank bringing together government officials, huge, massive corporate money, and the educational sector. Same basic principle, and they more or less try to direct policy, government policy, and to frame the narrative for you, and me and the great unwashed. And their article, which I've verified across various sources, says that the number of turkeys that have been raised in 2025 in the United States is 40% lower than where it was last year. A 40% drop in the number of turkeys raised in the United States between 2024 and 2025. And then I forget the numbers they put on it, but in terms of the chicken population, there have been millions of chickens culled in just the months of September and October. And the number killed, culled, unalived is actually double what it was last year. And it's all over concerns about H5, I believe it's H5N1 avian bird flu. And Nancy has shown up, and she's writing that Barack Obama, former president before Trump, president from 2008 to 2016, that he was a known supporter of the Council on Foreign Relations. If you look up their membership, it is a who's who of higher reaching government officials and big time corporate money. Like one individual was the head of the Carlyle Group. And if you know anything about the Carlyle Group, it's kind of like a who's who. It's the investment world meets the U.S. government officials. It's where they go back and forth. Guys like Howard Baker, who was Secretary of State to President George H.W. Bush. He leaves politics and he goes to work for Carlyle. They also had Carlyle had individuals who were high up in the U.S. intelligence services. They would leave government employment and go and work for Carlyle. Talk about a nice marriage, Carlyle Group. If you don't know about it, check into it. Um, it's something that I researched a long time ago in the wake of 9/11. And Danny is saying hi to Nancy. They are both in Montreal, and they're likely paying attention at any rate to the Canada's Grey Cup football game, the championship of the Canadian Football League, which is older than the Super Bowl and has been going on since the early 1900s. I think 1909. We're in like the 112th or 13th, something like that, edition. And the last I checked, Saskatchewan was winning by 8 points. And I don't know if they actually ultimately won the game or not, but our little 9-team CFL. And Saskatchewan is kind of the team that I like just because they're to me they're kind of like the Green Bay Packers. At any rate, let's get back to the topic at hand about turkeys and culling. And man, oh man. Um, so there's a lot less turkeys in the United States than there were at this time last year. Again, 40% fewer turkeys raised in the United States in 2025 versus 2024. And what is that going to mean to the food supply chain? What is it going to mean to the food supply chain when they're culling chickens en masse, massive millions and millions and millions in September and October? The number that were culled double what it was in September and October of 2024. And I did some further, just quick little searches, and Americans on average consume 100 pounds, is the rough guesstimate, of chicken per year. And what is, if all of a sudden chicken either becomes prohibitively expensive or simply not available or in short supply, then people are going to have to seek out alternative sources. If people are used to having, chicken once or twice a week, now they're going to have to replace that with something. And there is something of a domino effect. I also wonder whether we're going to see turkey shortages this coming Thanksgiving for the Americans and Christmas season for Canadians. And I don't know about Europe. I don't know the degree to which Europeans, Australians, New Zealanders, other Western nations, I don't know the degree to which they eat turkey. But it is something of a staple for a lot of North Americans, whether Canadian or American, to have the big Christmas turkey dinner. And a lot of people want that big 20, 25-pound bird. Not myself. I'm good with a 10, 12, 15-pound bird. But, when you're hosting a big family, you want a big bird. And what's going to happen if the supply simply isn't there? Are people going to start, I openly question, will people start to hoard turkeys? A lot of people have, big, what do they call them? Chest freezers that can hold multiple birds. What's going to happen? Are people going to start to fill their freezers with frozen turkeys? I've gotten an update from Danny. It looks like, Danny's listening to the game on the radio, and it's still going on. Montreal, again, that's what I checked just before I came on. 25-18 in favor of Saskatchewan, so an 8-point lead. So they need a touchdown plus a point, which, if you know the CFL rules, a point is easier to get. You don't have to wait for after a touchdown. If you punt the ball into the end zone and the other team doesn't run it back out, or if you punt it through the end zone, you get a single point. There are a few different rules, CFL versus NFL. Our field is wider, longer. Our field is 110 yards long. I don't know the width exactly, but I think it's 5, 10 yards wider than the Americans. The US NFL end zone is 20 yards. I believe that ours is 35 yards long. And we have 3 downs, not 4. We have the no yards penalty. A lot of little subtle. You watch it on TV, or you watch a game, and it's not immediately apparent the differences. But you'll notice when it's third down and you see a Canadian team kicking the ball away as opposed to trying to get a first down. Then that's because in Canada we only have 3. Um, Eat Me is writing that she has started to buy halal chicken breasts. That is the Islamic version of kosher. The animals have to be killed in a certain way and then given a blessing by an Islamic holy person. An Islamic, I think the term is imam or aman. It has to be blessed the same way that Jews have kosher. For Muslims, it's halal. And she's saying, due to their religion, they are hormone free and cheaper nowadays than the secular chicken. What I've noticed in the store that I work out is that we do get halal in chicken on occasion, and it's always priced the same. It's always priced the same. And I've had the halal and I've had the regular, and I don't notice any real difference between the two. And Danny says that you can eat halal meat as long as you pray over it. No, say a blessing, thank you for my daily bread, and realize who it is that delivers our daily bread. That was part of the sermon, part of the message today. Remember that Isaiah was fed by the ravens. Remember that the Israelites wandering in the desert or in the wilderness for 40 years were fed manna from heaven. Remember what Jesus said regarding the birds. Consider the birds. They neither work nor toil, and yet, you know, um, they're looked after. Um, And there was another reference he made in a sermon with respect to Jesus talking about the individual who stored up so much food that he had to increase the size of his barns so that he could store all his food wealth. And then it was his time, his number came up. What are you storing up for? Anyway. Do we rely on ourselves, our own knowledge, or do we put our faith in the Lord God, creator of all things? Easy to say, not always so easy to do. Seeding control, complete control, is a difficult thing. But so what's going to happen in terms of the food supply system? I think I have had for a while now, over a year, probably 2 years now. I've been talking about a coming storm that I see on the horizon, and it's actually a multi-front storm. And one component of it I see is disease. Go into Revelation chapter 6 and read about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse: red, black, white, and pale. That kind of bothers me. I tend to think of pale as being white, but the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, there's a white, a red, a black, and a pale horse. But at any rate, um, uh, I'm laughing at what Amy is saying, that you can cook allow meat with bacon grease. That's one of the dietary restrictions that Muslims share with members of the Jewish faith. No pork. Pork is haram. I don't know. I don't know if they have the term unclean, but they don't eat pork. When Muhammad was creating the Islamic faith, he borrowed a lot of the Jewish dietary laws. Uh, he borrowed a lot. Yeah, that's again the topic for another video about the contrasts and similarities between Islam and Judaism. Muhammad was heavily influenced by Judaism, but uh, What do you guys think? The one element of the coming storm I see, multi-front storm, is disease. And I wonder if bird flu could be the next big bad boogeyman. The justification for the cull of those ostriches just recently in Edgewood, BC, as well as the millions of chickens and countless turkeys, and there are even peacocks are under threat at a animal refuge somewhere in Canada. I was reading about it on Castanet, and they're petitioning. And I wonder, to what degree do we hear about all this culling? If farmers just knuckle under and say, okay, whatever you say, government, bow the knee and say, wipe out all our chickens, wipe out all our ducks, wipe out all our ostriches. I wonder how many farms just go along and there isn't widespread reporting of it. And there seems to be a lot of questions about the necessity of the cull that just took place with the ostriches. And I have to wonder, to what degree should we be questioning the culling that is going on with chickens and turkeys and other birds? And we have an update from Danny. The game is over and Saskatchewan won. Woohoo! Saskatchewan Roughriders. There used to be, amazing that the Canadian Football League for a long time had two teams that were named the Roughriders. There were the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and Roughriders was spelt as one word, Rough Rider all together. And then there were the Ottawa Rough Riders, two words. But then the Ottawa Rough Riders, they folded. They went away for a number of years. And then Ottawa's football team was resurrected, but they gave them a new name. And I believe they're the Renegades now, which seems like a stupid name for hyper compliant, do whatever you say government. There are no renegades, there are precious few renegades in Ottawa. In Ottawa, it's more like yes sir, yes sir, three bags full, sir, whatever you say, sir. You want me to close my business? You want me to put a diaper on my infant, on my toddler? You want me to follow stickers on the floor? You want me to get all upset about truckers going honk honk? Okay, renegades. Uh, Danny is writing that the majority of farms do go along with culls because they know it is necessary. It is the science we have at present. I hope you're being somewhat tongue in cheek there. Uh, uh, oh, and I got it wrong. It's not the Renegades, it's the Ottawa Red Blacks. So I got that one wrong. That was Renegades. I knew it was an R because I think they have a big R. They used to have two R's on their helmet when it was the Rough Riders, two words. But anyway, I do not. I have serious questions as to the necessity of that cull of the ostriches, because the stamping out policy of the Canadian Food Inspection Agency stipulates that it has to be done expeditiously, and they actually say on their own published information says that the culls must be carried out within 48 to 72 hours. Why so fast? Well, because the risk is simply too great. These birds are potentially highly infectious, and they're interacting with wild bird populations. There are wild turkeys around in Edgewood, BC. And if wild birds interact with the ostriches, then the wild birds will go to another chicken farm or some other poultry production facility and infect those birds. And it could impact the food supply system. And then it could, workers in the poultry industry could be infected. And then the virus itself could mutate. And then there could become a human iteration of H5N1 avian bird flu that could decimate the human population. We got to move fast. We got 48 to 72 hours because the risk is simply too great. Well, the initial so-called outbreak of avian bird flu in that ostrich population, based on the testing of two dead birds that tested positive for the disease, um, is what led to the cull order. But it didn't happen, obviously, within 48 to 72 hours. It happened 10 months later. So, what does that say about the CFIA's, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency's fear about the enormous potential for outbreaks all over the place? Well, where were the outbreaks? 10 months went by between the identification of those two dead ostriches who tested positive. And 10 months later, were there massive outbreaks anywhere? To my mind, my non expert, unqualified view, where's the evidence that your hypothesis about this being highly pathogenic and likely to spread? Where's the evidence? There's a 10-month window that we had. Where's the evidence that it spread? Show it to me. Show it to anyone. It's not there. Well, we got lucky. We got to kill them. We got to kill those birds. Got to kill the turkeys. We got to kill the chickens. And then what happens when chicken gets too expensive at the grocery store? People have to switch to alternatives. Are we going to see a reduction in the, a disruption of the food supply system? A number of things are being written. I've got Dan here is here. Yeah, I know you're different people. I have Danny and I have Dan. Dan is Dan is saying something to the effect of, and Tommy Temper is here as well. My goodness. Um, it was Dan who wrote that the majority of farms go along with culls because they know, okay, so I mistook Dan for Danny. That's my apologies. Um, Tommy Temper is here saying hi. And Dan is not speaking tongue in cheek. Dan is saying not at all, that he is in the farming community. And we have been through this back and forth and over and over and over and over. And I'm going to go over and over and over it again. Where was the chain of transmission? How many more infections have been traced back to the Universal Ostrich Farm? I haven't heard of one. And I am quite certain that if there was a traceable, if they had epidemiological evidence to support a traceable link between the Universal Ostrich Farm and some other poultry operation anywhere in British Columbia or Alberta or anywhere, or neighboring, down to the south in Washington or Oregon State, they'd be all over it. There was none. It didn't move. It didn't transmit. I was just watching an interview with Canada's Dr. Byram Bridle. He is considered one of this country's leading and maybe the leading expert on vaccinology in Canada. Just to put a fine point of that, he's a professor at the University of Guelph, which is known as an agricultural veterinary university. It's sometimes referred to as MU, euphemistically. And Dr. Bridle was his lab at the University of Guelph was funded to the tune of Ontario's Ministry of Health gave his lab hundreds of thousands of dollars in 2020 because they wanted his expert opinion on the vaccines that were under development back like April, May, June of 2020. So this guy is highly regarded, highly reputed. Now, his reputation, they slammed him when he had the temerity to go against the Anthony Fauci's, the I am the science guys of the world. And when he began to cast doubts on the efficacy and the necessity for the mass vaccination program that rolled out in earnest in late 2020, early 2021. And he got slandered and maligned. It was criminal what happened to him. He had no Twitter handle, and all of a sudden, all over Twitter, accounts started to appear the casual observer would say, "Oh, this is that Byron Bridle guy from the University of Guelph, the guy who is asking questions, who's questioning the official narrative. But they were not from him. He had no social media footprint. And so individuals, parties, interested players were creating fake accounts to malign Dr. Bridle. It's disgusting what happened to that man. But at any rate, the damage was done in the minds of a lot of people. A lot of people, propaganda works on people. That's why it's employed. That's why advertisers use it. You say safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective. And if you're dealing with someone with a very low IQ and you just repeat it often enough, they'll believe, oh, well, it's got to be safe and effective. I've heard that. It's been embedded into my subconscious. But let me read on. And Dan is putting forth a narrative that, we had the CFIA, they're the good guys, and that if you didn't respect the courts, well, then you're a radical. I'm straw manning a bit, I'll admit that. But, you know, the CFIA did not respect its own rules. It calls for humane culling. And yet what they did is they hired marksmen who fired probably 1,000 shots into a closed pen, terrifying these animals. It was not humane what the manner in which these ostriches were killed. And they presented this narrative that, oh my gosh, these things are highly pathogenic, and yet when the CFIA first showed up, were they wearing their space suits, their hazmat suits? No, until people started to question it. Wait a minute, why aren't they wearing any hazmat? Why are people so close? Those animals, you're in close proximity to them. If they're shedding this H5N1, then it's such a deadly concern. Why aren't you wearing personal protective equipment? Why aren't you, and then the CFIA started to put on I call it, a lot of people will say the space suit, the hazardous materials suit. It's good optics. It's good optics. It creates the impression of, oh my God, it makes you think of the movie Contagion or Outbreak. It's a very good way to frame the narrative for the nightly news for the double-digit IQ types who don't realize that CBC, CTV, Global, the mainstream players, that they have a narrative that they're pushing, that they're selling. They're not doing it. They're not engaging in any investigative journalism. They're just saying to the government, what do you want us to present? And then they do it. And if they do present the opposing side, they'll typically strawman it. They'll do their best to make it appear weak. As I've mentioned on this channel before, like Donald Trump or hate Donald Trump, I don't care. There are things that I like about him. There are things that I don't like about him. But I don't understand why the British Broadcasting Corporation, BBC, would bother to splice up a speech that he gave in order to frame Trump as encouraging an insurrection. And you can look into that yourself. What they did is Donald Trump, in his typical way, he said, we're going to march down. Okay, we're going to go down Pennsylvania Avenue. We're going to go to the Capitol building, and we're going to cheer on our brave and our amazing senators and congressmen. We're going to cheer them on. We like some of them more than others, but we're going to cheer them all on. That was the speech he gave. But that's not the speech that BBC presented. They included the part where he said, we're going to march down to the Capitol, but then with a very professionally, very well done splice, BBC, they got big bucks. They immediately clipped on the next section, which came 20, 30 minutes later. And so when you saw the BBC documentary, he's going, we're going to march down to the Capitol and we're going to fight. We're going to fight, fight, fight. We're going to fight like we've never fought before. And it's like, but why did they do that? Why, and the I forget exactly the title, but a very senior official, I think the head of the news department and the equivalent of the CEO for the corporation, had resigned as a result of it. It's gross and disgusting. It's like when CBC News Edmonton in this country back in 2020 put on their green screen the picture of a mannequin hooked up to a ventilator, trying to scare people, oh my gosh, look, there's someone hooked up to a ventilator. Yeah, it's a mannequin. And testament to the fact that that was unethical journalism was the fact that CBC, the director of CBC News Edmonton, had to issue a public apology. And the way he did, he said he framed it as a mistake, an error in judgment. And I call BS. So it wasn't a mistake. You were, if it bleeds, it leads. You were looking to program a narrative into the addled brains of stupid news consumers in Canada who don't have the, who just, if it bleeds, it leads, sell fear. And so, you know, and it's likewise, there's another case where the journalistic ethics of our media in Canada can be severely questioned was in October of 2021 when the chief medical officer of health for the province of Alberta, Dina Hinshaw, did a live media press conference, and she announced that Alberta had just experienced its youngest ever COVID death. A 14-year-old, she said, had just died of COVID, and she mentioned he had some underlying health issues, but it was a COVID death, and this was just prior to them authorizing these shots for children, and they had their poster child. They had they could sell a narrative. This child COVID. And did the press do any investigation? Did the press look to find out, you know, was this kid terminally ill? What are these underlying health conditions? No. And as a matter of fact, at the press conference, members of the press actually admonished, took Dina Hinshaw to task and complained about her even mentioning the fact that this kid had underlying health issues. And then what happened was members of the child's family, they knew who Dina Hinshaw was talking about. And they went to CBC, they went to CTV, and they went to Global and said, Dina Hinshaw is lying. Our family member did not die of COVID. He died of terminal stage 4 brain cancer. He's in palliative care. He's receiving end of life care treatment because the authorities know that he's dying of brain cancer. And 2 days before his fully expected passing, they forced this kid to take a nasal colonoscopy, a PCR test, in order to, and I'm going to say it, in order to blame his death on COVID, even though they knew that his death was due to cancer. And again, you can verify this. Proof is there. Dina Hinshaw later apologized. And again, she used those famous words that were used by the senior officials at the BBC, that was used by the director of CBC News in Edmonton. Oh, we made a mistake. It was an error in judgment. And I don't like to swear on my channel. I try to be profanity free as much as possible, but I call bullshit. She knew exactly what she was doing. That is my opinion, and you're not going to change it. It was not an error in judgment. She wanted to sell she might as well be in stockholder relations for Pfizer, Moderna, and the rest for the pharmaceutical industry, and to boost their sales. Anyway, let's see what Dan is writing. I'll get back to the chat. I'm going to miss a lot because there's too much being written. But Dan is writing that Universal Ostrich Farm was in quarantine after H5N1 was discovered and would have minimized contact. The farm acted very careless. Wait a minute. So you're saying that acted they acted properly and would have minimized contact? But then in the next sentence, you're saying the farm acted very carelessly and you have no way of knowing the extent of virus transfer. So you're saying that the reason there were no outbreaks is because the farm acted responsibly and minimized contact. From what I saw, and there were tons of videos available, both from people on the scene and the news media, there were people interacting with the birds. And again, to put a fine point on things, the media reported on an individual, a teenage, I believe, girl, who died with the cause of death listed as H5N1 bird flu. However, what's little reported is the fact that the child had at least two serious comorbidities, one being asthma, which a lot of people have, but the second one is morbid obesity. And the morbidly obese have, and you can check into this, the morbidly obese are known to be severely immunocompromised, meaning they'll get sick from anything and potentially die from any pathogen floating around, streptococcus. There are so many. We cannot eliminate every single risk in this world. There's a potential you're more likely to die from a lightning strike than you are to die from contracting bird flu, according to all the research that's been published on it. Exponentially more likely to die from a lightning strike. So, what are we going to do? Given that lightning strikes are far more deadly, far more dangerous than bird flu, what are we going to do? We're going to lock everyone in their houses whenever there's the potential for lightning storm? Is that what we're going to do? No one would accept that. No one would accept that because we have enough experience. I've never known anyone struck by lightning. It's not unheard of. I know of individuals. Lee Trevino famously was struck 2 or 3 times on the golf course, famous golfer. But it's something we have experience with. But when it comes to H5N1 bird flu, where's the typical response? Where's your degree in immunology? Where's your degree in virology? Where's your degree in epidemiology? You don't know. We'll defer to the experts. And who are the experts that get to go on to the nightly news? They are often individuals who are deeply indebted to the pharmaceutical industry that funds them. The Dalai Lama, I want to say that properly, it's not the Dalai Lama School of Public Medicine. The University of Toronto has a division, a school of public medicine that is called the Dalai Lama School of Public Medicine. And you can do the digging if you like, or you can take my word. Either way, I don't care. But they are funded by the pharmaceutical industry. You do not bite the hand that feeds you. When the tobacco industry funded research that quote unquote proved that cigarette smoking was not detrimental to health, a lot of people say, "Oh, well, of course, that's what they found." The tobacco industry was paying them, and they're profit driven. Pfizer is a publicly traded company. You think they want to see their share price go down? You think they want to see their dividend cut or eliminated? CBC News, or rather, the Oscars brought to you by Pfizer. The Super Bowl brought to you by Pfizer. Tonight's newscast brought to you by Pfizer. You do not bite the hand that feeds you. Now, Eat Me is saying that the RCMP is still occupying the farm grounds 1 week after the culling, not a normal procedure. One thing I want to know is, okay, can we do a post-mortem and determine that the culling actually was warranted after the fact by testing the birds, their carcasses? Because the argument they give that you'll hear from the proponents for the killing, they'll say that the virus can hide out in so many different parts of the body. It can be in the brain, the pancreas. It can be in the bowels. It can be all over the bird. And so you have to do all this different testing to determine. And that's simply too hard. We can't do that. Just shoot them all. Just shoot them all and let God sort it out, is the rationale. The only thing is, and this is where, I invite you to listen to a genuine expert, Dr. Byron Bridle, and he talks about how every one of us who's encountered a viral pathogen of some sort like varicella, chickenpox, that it will be residing within our system in some area, maybe in the brain somewhere, I don't remember specifically the terminology he used. And again, I'm out of my lane here. That's why I'm referencing Dr. Bridle, who's a university professor and an expert in this field. But he said, just because you have a viral remnants of dead viral RNA residing within your system does not mean that you are actively infectious. Otherwise, you got to, I'm goodness knows. When we're looking at what we are looking at, I'm going to wrap up. What we are looking at is a narrative being imposed. And some people like Dan will believe it because they trust the government. The government doesn't lie. MK Ultra, that's just conspiracy theory. That woman you're hearing about who, was given LSD and other, psychotropic drugs by the CIA and everything, that never really happened. Even if CBC, they're just, I don't know what kind of excuse people would give to ignore MK Ultra or the Tuskegee experiment that the Americans engaged in, where they let men suffer and die from syphilis without offering them any treatment so that they could study the untracked progression of syphilis in a population. Went on for 40 years. No, that never really happened, even if it's on uh, the Center for Disease Control website, even if the US government under Bill Clinton issued an apology while never once bringing anyone to criminal charges against anyone for, Dr. Mengele level science, never happened. There are individuals who will just believe whatever the government says. And, but there are those of us who question, who dare to question the narrative, like me, who didn't get the COVID vaccine. And there are millions like myself. That's why CBC News and needs, billions of dollars from Canadian taxpayer year after year after year, because too many people have woken up to the fact that the CBC News is nothing but a propaganda arm for the federal government. And likewise, CTV and Global and other legacy mainstream media outlets, they're beholden to government for collectively hundreds of millions of dollars. It's $400 million a year, which is doled out to shared out amongst Global, CTV, Torstar Corporation, Post Media, the legacy media outlets, because everyone's, I shouldn't say everyone, obviously, there are still millions of Canadians. There's still a few million Canadians who think that when they're watching the CBC News, they are being informed. And it strikes me, Dan, that you are one of them. Amy's writing that the ostriches can run 40 kilometers an hour. They were probably, I Eat Me Nancy, when that was going on, I was doing a live stream and she was watching it at the same time. I couldn't. I couldn't. That level of depravity. If I'm not gonna watch it intentionally. I'm not going to seek it out. No way. Just shooting at those birds, inhumane. And an ostrich has a small head, as Nancy, they're fast, they move around, their heads dart around. Stand 100 yards away with a shotgun, or not with a shotgun, but with the, I don't care how good a rifle it is and what kind of scope, hitting a moving target at any distance is difficult. And I imagine those birds suffered a lot. They were suffering, pain and suffering. If you're going to do it and have to do it, well, put a enclosure over and gas them and get it over with quick. Don't torture the poor things. My God. Um, Dan is accusing me of hearsay, which fair enough. They were wearing PPE in the hot zones, which I saw what mainstream reporting that purported to be CFIA uh, staff interacting with the ostriches in the pen or in the enclosure, I guess you would call it. What I saw pictures of them without PPE and with PPE, but whatever. And Dan is saying this, and this is fair enough. I'll give him his credit here. The narrative that you are following is the one given by the protesters. And that's where you have to be incredibly careful with social media, is because there's something referred to as rage farming, and the mainstream media engages in it. And I would argue that you see even more of it online streaming, YouTube stations like my own, but not like mine. Tend It's performance art, and my station very bare bones basic. What you see is what you get, and but there are yeah, it doesn't cost a lot of money to get for take a grand. And if I took $1,000, or probably even just 500, 600, I'm not sure how much it would take, but I could get myself some professional lighting, a mic, and a green screen, and purchase some software, and make my little miserable little station look similar or somewhat like the nightly news. You see it. There are tons of them out there. And you also see the individuals on these stations, and they assume media type personalities. And it's what they're projecting out because they think it will sell, it will drive engagement. I'm not worried about it. What you see is what you get. I hope, I consider when I watch these stations, the one thing that comes to my mind is how authentic are they? Do they genuinely believe what they're putting forward? Or are they merely what's called rage farming? Are they merely trying to drive engagement? You know, and it was disgusting what happened. I'm your professor of truth. Bobby whatever, and it just I used to do live theater. I've been in a dozen stage plays, a dozen or so, maybe 15 in the course of my life. And before I would go on stage, before I'd start treading the boards, I was in like Cat and Hot Tin Roof, played Gooper, Brother Man. And I remember when I was walking backstage, getting ready to go on, and I was getting myself into character and going, "We're going to tell Big Daddy. We're going to tell Big Daddy. And I'm getting into my Southern accent, and I'm getting all ready because I know I got to project it and I got to sell it to the back row. And so I'm performing now. I'm being Gooper, Brother Man, of the Pollock family, and and I could do it. I was decent. I was very good at memorizing my lines. But when it comes to this interaction, this isn't theater. Act one, my little station. I just want to talk about things, and I also want to bring it back always to faith, because ultimately, the Bible says 365 times, the words translated into English as fear not appear. And there's a reason for that, and I've said it many times. It's because fear makes a person easy to control. It is the language of the enemy, of Satan, of the devil. Scare people. When you can scare people, you can control them. And fear over H5N1 avian bird flu, will get people to accept what I consider to be atrocities. And we saw it during COVID. What reasonable person would suggest that an abused individual be forced to shelter in place with their abuser while at the same time giving the abuser full access to alcohol? Alcohol is essential. We can't shut down alcohol production, sale, production, distribution. Can't do that. And we're going to force the abused to shelter in place with their abusers. That, in my books, was an atrocity. But the great unwashed accepted it. Why? Because they were afraid. But but COVID is going to kill us all. We're all going to die of COVID. Got to do whatever it takes. 80% of the deaths in Canada, were happening in long-term care, nursing home, hospice type situations where people go at the end of natural life expectancy, when they're taking 10 prescription medications, when they can't get dressed, feed, bathe, or toilet themselves without extensive help, where like 80-90% of the population in Ontario's long-term care facilities have serious cognitive issues like Alzheimer's and dementia. They don't know what day of the week it is. And when people go into long-term care type facilities, again, nursing homes, hospices, because they are at the end of natural life expectancy. And where were the people dying? And over in Teresa Tam told the Washington Post, 80% of our deaths are in long-term care. What a shock. People are dying. I think it's in the neighborhood of 800 to 900 Canadians die every single day of all causes. And they weaponized death to scare the people into submission so that they would accept forcing the abused to shelter in place with their abusers, that they would accept having a person dying, being deprived of all human contact, not being and depriving family members from a final chance to embrace a dying mother, father, grandmother, grandfather, uncle, aunt. That was disgusting, but it was countenanced because of fear. And now we got to kill all those ostriches because it's just too risky. I'm afraid. That's what I hear you saying, Dan. I'm afraid. What if it spreads? What if it mutates? What if I get hit by lightning? And that's where having faith is a huge. Christians will talk about putting on the armor of God. And part of that armor is against the weapons of fear that the enemy uses to try and control us. And the enemy has his army. Watch the nightly news when they're trying to scare you about bird flu. Gotta kill all the ostriches, gotta kill all the chickens, kill all the ducks, kill all the turkeys. What's going to happen to the food supply then? If what I read is accurate, multiple sources put it around 100 pounds a year of chicken are consumed by Americans every year. What happens? And I'll put a fine point on this. So the multi-front scenario I see playing out is that we're going to see disease and new iterations of COVID, new iterations of seasonal influenza, flu, bird flu, swine flu, Marburg virus, Eastern equine encephalitis that's going to infect your brain if you get stung by a mosquito, bit by a mosquito. I think we're going to see and I think it could be just months away. It comes at us, all these diseases. That's one aspect. Then you look at another aspect, war. We have a war going on between the Ukraine and Russia that doesn't look like it's ending anytime soon. The conflict in the Middle East seems to have calmed down a bit. I mean, there was a genocide going on in Yemen with 100 plus thousand people killed, children starving to death. Syria, massive death and destruction. Sudan, most recently, the reporting saying that satellite images can show blood on the streets from the massive killing. The United Arab Emirates have been accused of backing an insurgent army group, the RTF or RSF, forget the acronym, Rapid Response Force, something like that, and abetting a genocide in Nigeria. But the International Court of Justice said, well, that's not our jurisdiction. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. We're not going to rule. And then, of course, Gaza, there's the conflict between Hamas that wants to wipe Israel off the map from the river to the sea, and Israel that seems to be they're fighting fire with fire. They're taking an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth and more. And so there's that conflict. And now in Venezuela, now we have the U.S. that has sent a battle group. They've sent the Gerald R. Ford, the largest aircraft carrier in the American fleet, is in the Caribbean Sea off the coast of Venezuela, along with frigates, destroyers. At least one submarine is in there as well. I think there's 10 to 15 ships in total that are off the shore. Venezuela, Maduro, I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce his name. The president of Venezuela is put his military forces on high alert. There's talk of the potential for an invasion, for a regime change, and there's a question whether it could spill over then into Colombia, neighboring Colombia. There, conflict everywhere. The situation between Taiwan and China always appears like it could blow up at any moment. Everything's calm right now and has been forever. But China has a one China policy and they do not recognize Taiwan as an independent nation state. I'm starting to lose my voice. And let me read up on what's being said. Just a couple more things. Nancy wrote a while ago. Oh, and I lost a lot. Dan's writing that. Listen, as I said, I am in the farm community. Now, does that mean you are a farmer yourself or not? Because I live in an area, I live in rural southeastern Ontario, Northumberland County, and this is a farming area. The biggest, there's everything. There's a pig farm down the road from me, not far, like I can drive there in 2, 3 minutes. I could walk there in half an hour or so. But mainly this area is known for apple orchards. So you're in the farm community, but then so am I. And we followed this and had updates regularly. Don't assume that you know more than those of us in the industry. So what industry are you in? What aspect of farming are you in? Uh, and Danny's saying that no fear was a 1990s movie motto, rather. No fear was a 19. I don't remember that one. But then Danny goes on to say, I fear no man. I fear God's wrath. Man cannot hurt me. Jesus is king. Do not fear he that has power over this life. The beginning of wisdom is fear of God. Fear that which has judgment over eternal life. And fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. Recognizing the reality of the situation now. And I know that my station does attract some atheists, some agnostics. And just to put a fine point on it, if you're unfamiliar with the term agnostic, uh, Gnostic, where did I get that? Gnostic, Gnostic, if you want to pronounce it that way. Gnosticism is the pursuit of knowledge, ultimate knowing, gnosis. It's a Greek word. And when you put a in front of something, like if someone is moral, that means they follow moral guidelines. But if someone is amoral, that means they don't. And if someone is Gnostic, they believe in an ultimate knowledge power, gnosis. An agnostic or an agnostic, because an agnostic, but it's typically pronounced agnostic, is more or less saying, I don't know. I don't know. There might be something out there, maybe not. I'm not sure. But at any rate, I know that my station does attract some non-believers, and that's fair enough. The only thing is, personally, I cannot wrap my head around this wondrous creation simply being the product of time plus matter plus luck, chance. This idea that matter was just floating around in space, blah, 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 for millions, billions, however long of time. And then chance, accident came along, and then mutations, billions upon billions of more accidents. I don't buy it. I don't think that's possible. I love what Ronald Reagan framed it well. And I doubt, I'm sure he didn't come up with this on his own, but he popularized it. He said he wanted to host a White House gala dinner, 5, 6, 7 course meal, the most scrumptiously, beautifully prepared, tastiest food you could imagine. And he wanted to invite prominent atheists to come and dine. And then at the end of the meal, he would announce to them that, oh, by the way, there is no chef. This all just created itself. It just is an accident. And that is ultimately, at a high level, the reason that I absolutely 100% totally acknowledge the existence of a creator God. And God is such a limiting term, but the English language has its limitations. It is what it is. It's what we have to work with. When Moses was in the presence of the divine at the burning bush, he asked for a name. He said, "Well, when I go to the people of the answer, the people of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, when I go to your people, and I say that you have sent me, what name am I going to give them? Give me a name. I want a name. I want to define you. I want to put you in a box. We got Ra, we got Osiris, we got Nubis, we got all these. I know all these Egyptian gods, I know their job, but based on their names. So give me your name so I can have some idea as to what box you fit into." And God wouldn't play that game. God just said, "I am." Tell them, "I am. I exist. I am Yahweh." Anyway, and Danny's saying the great thing about COVID was that nobody died from cancer, and no one died of flu either. All of a sudden, in 2017, 2018, there were over 8,500 deaths attributed to the flu. And then all of a sudden, no one died of the flu anymore. The flu disappeared. Everything's COVID now. And they attributed 8,500 deaths to the flu. The actual number, 8,511. Look it up. I can't remember the year though, whether it was 2017, 2018. Regardless, in that 1 year, it was the highest number within the last 5 when I looked it up. 8,511 people died, but that was without subjecting a huge swath of the population to a PCR test and then blaming every death with a positive test as a flu death, the way that we did with COVID. With COVID, Toronto Public Health on their official Twitter account announced to the world all the way back in June. It was May or June of 2020. Early on, they said that any death that comes with a positive COVID test is included with the COVID death totals, even if COVID wasn't the cause. So if you get hit by a bus and you had a positive COVID test, well, you get included with the COVID death totals. Think about that when people say, well, 15,000 Canadians died. Well, that's the death total. That's the number of people who died with the positive COVID test. How many of them actually died of COVID? We'll never know. They're never going to tell us. That's the propagandistic element, one of the many propagandistic elements to the whole COVID, what I refer to unapologetically as a psychological operation. I was in SIGINT. I was a SIG in the Canadian Armed Forces. Didn't always work in a grocery store. And I'm here to say that was a psychological operation from start to finish. And I think you better have your guard up about you if you're going to want to navigate the fear that's coming, fear of disease, all these diseases. I forgot measles. Oh my gosh, measles, a childhood disease that existed forever. Parents used to put their kid, oh, Bobby got measles. Okay, get the other 2 boys, put them into bed together so we can get it over with. It's childhood disease. I had it. Everyone gets it. Yeah, 28 years ago, someone in a town 15, miles away, their child died of it, but that child had so many health problems, he was probably gonna die anyway, so, man, big deal. Yeah, that was measles for 100 plus years. Childhood disease, chickenpox party, measles party. Let's get it over with, people. Now I think we're gonna, now they're trying to scare us. Oh, Canada's lost its designation as having eliminated measles. Oh my gosh, I have to stay home from work. Now, back in that era, back when measles was just a childhood disease, and oh well, Billy has chickenpox. Let's give it to the other kids. Let's put them all in bed together so they all get it at the same time. When childhood diseases were treated like childhood diseases, nothing to worry about. The Brady Bunch did an episode on it where Peter comes home. I got measles, 101 temperature. They checked. And then they show all the kids sitting in bed, all the 6 kids, Greg, Peter, Bobby, Marcia, oh gosh, Cindy, and now I forget the middle one, the middle girl. Anyway, someone tell me. They had them all in bed together, and they said, "Boy, if you're going to get sick, measles is the way to go." That's the way the media portrayed measles back then, because they didn't have an intervention. I'll use that word, that they could make billions of dollars off of yet. Now that they do, now that the pharmaceutical industry is making huge bucks off their intervention, now they show TV shows of, oh my gosh, there's a measles outbreak. Didn't those people get their kids vaccinated? Oh my God, this is terrifying. What happened? Why did we lose our collective minds? Why? It's profit to be had. Anyway, so you're going to have that, disease all over the place. We've got worries about war. I think something's going to blow. Something's going to blow, and maybe it'll happen all at once, or one after the other after the other. And once you have disease and war going on, you have an almost perfect storm to disrupt the supply chain, to disrupt food supply, and to drive people more and more into dependence on their government masters and overlords. Digital IDs, get your digital ID or we're not going to help you. Take the mark. This is what's coming. And I'm not claiming to be a prophet or anything of that nature. I don't have to be. It's all in here already. Read Revelation 13. If you want to buy and sell in the marketplace, if you want to be a participating member of society, take the mark. All your thought, you'll be thinking about, how do I keep the government happy and how do I keep them off my back? And I got to work to satisfy the government. And that's a representation for me of what it means when it says that we must be marked on the hand or on the forehead. I think it's going to be in a fashion both. I've spoken about the fact before that I believe it's in Deuteronomy. There's a passage wherein it says that we're to love the Lord our God with all our heart, mind, body, soul, strength. God wants it all. And it is to be as a frontlet between our eyes and as a mark upon our hands. Satan is the great imitator. God wants all our thoughts and all our actions. They want them to be devoted to him, to his holy will, to his righteousness. Satan wants the same devotion. God makes it a choice. God gives us free will. God says, here's my hand. You can accept it. You can reject it. It's your choice. The enemy, though, will say, oh, you're not going to take some milk. Well, then you cannot work. You cannot eat. You cannot put food on the table. You cannot put a roof over your head or clothes on your children's back. You must submit. The enemy doesn't care whether you accept it willingly, by trickery, or by ultimately force. Whale showed up late, and I cited you early in the podcast, Whale, over the fact that you had mentioned that there are turkeys available, butterball frozen available in your neck of the woods. Nothing as of yesterday, nothing as of Saturday, Perhaps some have come in. I'm not expecting that turkeys are going to be disappear completely, but I think we could face possibly a toilet paper type COVID situation where people start hoarding and filling their freezers because the price is probably going to be higher than it was last year, although maybe not a lot because grocery stores often and Walmarts and places, they use turkeys as a loss leader. They're willing to sell it for no profit or even to lose money on the turkey because they'll get you to buy the stuffing, the cranberries, you'll buy everything else for the Thanksgiving meal. And, the turkey, whether it costs you 30, 40, 50, $60, if they lose money on it, so what? You're going to spend 100 plus on apple pie, pumpkin pie, and all the fixings, all the trimmings and everything else. So what we lose on the turkey, we more than make up on that other, a couple $100 worth of, decorations even, because a lot of grocery stores now, they sell everything. They have a general merchandise. Uh, and Danny's talking about the fact that he still has old school muskox, 98% DEET, horseflies, black flies, and mosquitoes. Keep an 8-foot radius from me with 2 drops. Unlike that something they try to sell us. Now that's 30%. Eat Me saying, Dan, and this is to Dan, the one who is from a farming community. Not sure if he's a farmer himself. He hasn't made that clear. Does not agree with him. Says your statement makes as much sense as a rock. They dis only one test on dead birds through their rear end, and that was enough for a mass cull. Now you say 5 tests per bird. Yeah. Uh, I kind of want to leave the whole COVID. I want to leave the whole ostrich situation aside. I mean, it's over and done. There's nothing we can do about it now. What we can do is about going forward. The only problem is we have to know. And I think a lot of farmers are just complying. They're buying into the narrative. They're, fear of the government. You got to be, you got to comply. You got to bend the knee. You got to do whatever they say, whether you agree with it or not. You can't, it's the old, you can't fight City Hall. Uh, and Nancy's writing that just look at China. They're already into a digital ID system, even if you have cash in the bank or you wrote back, but I think you meant bank. If you have been unpersoned by the government, yeah, they got the whole social credit score thing. If you jaywalk, if you're late for work, your social credit score goes down, and then your ability to participate in society is geared to your social credit score. There's a big, if you're young and you want to go to a big rave in Shanghai, well, you're not allowed entry if your social credit score is too long or is too low. If you want to make a trip, if you want to get on a plane or a train in China and go and visit your family or friends or relatives, whatever, and your social credit score is too low, sorry, you're not allowed to travel. You haven't been a good little boy. Big brother is watching you. Uh, yeah, and Nancy's putting a point on it, saying no medical, no transportation, no way of paying rent. Uh, and that ultimately people can end up in China living on the streets begging for scraps. And this is what I'm telling you is coming. Is coming. I tend to think that it's coming in months, but I could be wrong. I have something, I admit it, what I will call an immediacy bias. When I see things coming, I tend to see the train as being, objects in the mirror, maybe closer than they appear. I tend to think that they're closer than they really are. I tend to think things are coming really fast, and so often it takes a while. Had so many things rattling around on my brain lately. I haven't been doing lives as often just because we've been busy. Should be doing some more coming up. I'm going to be working less in the coming weeks, and as I approach my 60th birthday, I'll be looking to pull back even more. So Anyway, God bless. Thank you for watching. I know this was rambly and all over the place, but damn it, I enjoyed it. A little mild expletive deleted there. Damn it, I enjoyed it. So I'll segue from that little mild swear word into the blessing that I like to give from Numbers chapter 6, and slightly modified version of the blessing that Aaron spoke over God's covenant chosen people. May the Lord bless and keep you. May the Lord God, creator of all things, may he look down upon you and lift up his countenance upon you. And may the Lord God Almighty, creator of all things, may he grant you peace. And I'm here to tell you, as I always do, that you can find peace in this world by getting into relationship through God, with rather that you can find peace by getting into relationship with God through his son, Jesus Christ. Pick up a Bible, read the Gospels at least, but you need more. You need more. You need the context. You need to understand, what the context, what the mindset was of people living in first century Roman occupied Judea. And to do that, you need to get into the Old Testament. But you got to you got to crawl before you walk, you got to walk before you run. So I would recommend reading John's Gospel, the Gospel according to John, if you have not read the Bible before. Um, if you've never picked up scripture before, try and find something with an easy to read translation. King James may be too difficult, depending on your, familiarity with Elizabethan English and the thous and the these and the lest and the what have you. There's the New Living Translation, the New International Version. These are much more, the language is far more current, far more reflective of the way we talk today. Anyway, God bless. If you made it all the way through an hour and a half, pretty darn near, and you haven't subscribed to my channel, what are you waiting for? It's your choice, obviously, but I would appreciate it. Um, and likewise, thank you for the thumbs up I've had so far, and look forward to the next discussion. Danny, I will be doing another live stream Wednesday. I agree with your suggestion. Danny had recommended to me. Danny and Nancy moderate for me. They're hugely helpful in keeping the odd time when I've had trolls show up. They've been massively helpful in moderating the chat so that things don't get out of hand. Uh, Danny has suggested that I go back to doing a Wednesday night stream, and looks like my schedule is going to allow for it. And Wednesday will be a faith based. I'm going to make it Christian based. I'm going to look at scripture, pick out a passage from scripture, and speak to it and try and relate it to this world that we're living in, this crazy upside down world. But the world was crazy and upside down 2,000 years ago. The more things change, the more they stay the same. So we'll see you all on Wednesday if you can make it. God bless. And again, like, subscribe. Hey, you can even share it if you want. God bless. We'll talk to you later. Night all, and thanks everyone.